we are sitting and talking with Dr. Angela Aboagye. She's been, in this field for a long time, but she is the executive director of the ACT Foundation. And I'm going to post, tag her after this meeting so you can find her and you can find the organization. But they built the first women's shelter in Ghana in 1999. Wow. So she's been doing this for a long time. So she's a veteran in here. She knows, she's heard the stories. She is also a very wonderful woman of God that loves God and says, keep praying for us. And that's what we can do, right? We can support and we can pray. And she's also authored a book that I would love us to all go and, get a copy of. It's called Ministering to Hurting Women, Women's Mental Health and Pastoral Response in Ghana. Isn't that amazing? But, you don't have to be in Ghana to read the book. You have to be a woman and you can read the book, or even a man. So for the men on the group, you can also read the book. Okay. So excited that we can hear from her and we can learn some of these things that we may not know, or we may not have thought of it that way, but it will be helpful for our growth and our own development. So welcome. And we are so excited to have you. All right. So we're going to go ahead and dig in. So Angela, I think that you have done a lot of things yourself, but I want us to hear from you. Who is Angela Aboagye-Dwamena? I think you should do your own elevator speech. Maybe I didn't do justice to the intro, so you should do yours.
I thought you did well, Tina. Well, thank you very much for having me, Tina, and thank you for letting me speak to your group of people. I'm sure I'm welcome. And yes, my name is Angela. My surname is Dwamena Aboagye. By marriage, by family, Duasechi. I am a lawyer, a theologian, a counselor, registered with the Ghana Psychological Council as a paraprofessional. And I work with abused women and children mainly. I've done this for the past, probably getting on to 30 years now. Probably getting on to 30 years now. Yes, if not more. And well, just me. I'm a minister with International Central Gospel Church, a licensed minister. And so, yeah, I'm funny, I think. I'm a grandma of 2, a mother of 4.
Oh, wow.
A wife of 1 husband. I love Jesus.
That's it. That's it. It's amazing, right? It's beautiful. She just loves God and she's here to be a blessing to many. And that's exactly what she's been doing. And I am so thankful for her, because when I reached out to her, she didn't hesitate at all. It's like, yeah, let's work it out. So I really thank you. I'm so appreciative of your time and for you being here. I believe I will be blessed just listening and learning as well. All right, so let's talk about domestic violence, domestic abuse. What is that all about? Because we have all heard the term, we've all had it being talked about a lot of times. We equate it sometimes with just the physical part of, the, situation of someone hitting, a loved one or something. But let's talk about what is domestic abuse and domestic violence, and how have you seen it unfold in your own career and your own work?
Okay, so thank you again, Tina. Yes, I'm sure many of us are familiar with the physical aspects of domestic violence or abuse. Yeah. Violence and abuse are often used interchangeably, even if you look at the literature around this issue. Okay, so we can use abuse or violence. They mean practically the same thing within the context within which we are speaking. Let's take the word violence. Okay. Violence is often a very negative word. In fact, the only time I have heard it used in a positive sense was when Jesus said, those who want to go to heaven they do it with violence. You know,
That's
when
the
you
only
are,
time.
if you really want to get to heaven, so you're serious about it. Okay, that's where the positive use of it in that sense. But oftentimes it's a negative word because um, it is an act, it's behavior, a conduct of somebody who wants to put another person in fear of that behavior that they're exhibiting or the conduct that they're showing to that person. And often it's an act or behavior or conduct that intends to harm another person, injure another person, endanger another person, humiliate another person, demean another person. Okay, so when you talk about abuse or violence, this is the context within which you look at it. So now bring it to domestic. Domestic simply means to most of us the family setting.
Yeah.
If it's not the family setting, in Ghana, for example, in our law, when we say domestic violence or abuse, we are looking at people who share a residence together. So they may not even be married, or they may not be blood relations, but the fact that they live in a domestic setting together, like a compound house, if one of them abuses the other person, it is seen as domestic violence. Then it is also having blood relationships, so sister, brother, cousin to cousin, grandmother to grandson, grandson to grandfather, so where there are blood relations. So there's the residential relationship, then the blood relationship, and then the romantic relationship. So husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, somebody whom you're dating or courting, or somebody with whom you've had a child before, but there's no relationship. So these form the romantic aspects. So in other jurisdictions, it's a bit narrow, but in Ghana, we extend domestic abuse to exactly. So for example, people who are fond of insulting their grandparents, just because they have maybe dementia or something, they start calling them witches and things like that. That's domestic violence. That's domestic abuse. Okay, people who live with their house helps and don't give them food to eat, and starve them, just mistreats them, insults them. That's domestic abuse in Ghana. People who live with their co-tenants, and throw saucepans at them, and insult them and insult their grandmother. That's domestic violence in Ghana. So, but usually we because the dynamic is often between the romantic relations, particularly spousal.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest problem for us as Christians when it comes to domestic violence. That's why we tend to, concentrate a bit more on that, even though all the other ones too are as important. Because it's happening in marital relationships, and marriage is very core to the Christian life. That's why, right.
So you see, Dr. Angela, that's why we said we need another session. We're already putting in the invitation for next year to talk about all these aspects, because it's really broad. And
yes, it is.
I mean, like you said, you wouldn't have even thought that if I called someone and my grandma a witch, I'm abusing the person, but that is how we are not even thinking through some of these things. And demeaning someone, all these words that you used, we just take it for granted. We sometimes are disrespectful to people. And, if we are the image of God and we are all supposed to look at each other that way, then there's something missing. And that's why, even though we are saying we are Christians, we are missing some education about the image of God that we are relating with and how we relate with them.
Yeah. I really love what you said about the image of God. And I wish that we would all remember it very well. Imago Dei. It means that you are created in the image and likeness of God. And so even in our fallen state, God so loves us. So much so that when Jesus was on earth, he actually said, if you call your brother even a word as fool, you will be liable to the fires of hell. That's a serious statement. Your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, and there are many permutations of the word fool. And that is also a form of verbal abuse. If only we remember that when we are demeaning, insulting, injuring people with our words, our hands, with objects, we will remember that these are people created in the image and likeness of God. And in fact, when you are in relation to them, one day God will ask you, what did you do with them?
Yes.
If only we will remember, that might really help us to frame our understanding of how we treat other people when we are in relationship with them. The words we say, our conduct, the things we do with our hands, the slappings, the kickings, the strangling, the beating. I tell you, so it's a good place to really place this conversation.
Amazing, because I think one of the struggles is that as a church, as a Christian, or as Christians, this thing is so silent. We cannot talk about it. It's like that, don't go there, don't talk about it. Yes, if you're in church, you just have to be in church. You have to, there's nothing like that openness to talk about this on a bigger scale for us to have that dialogue. And you would have thought, it's a bit ironic, because you would have thought that we will be the ones leading this charge.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. Again, sometimes we do forget a bit that we are the salt and light of the earth. Yes. In fact, this is our work, and that we must be leading other people to look at these issues. Often the world will go ahead, and then we find it hard to catch up. We are shadow boxing, and we don't even know what to do with what the world is saying. When we must be the ones to throw light on it and actually wrestle with it and come to some understanding of these things, because they are about relationships. Every one of the examples I gave are about relationships, and relationships are done in community, and communities are created by God and the people in them. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and even all the people that are living therein belong to the Lord. And this is why we need to understand these things. And yes, there's a lot of silence, and it's better than it used to be when I started working on this issue, maybe over 30 years ago. But still, the church finds it very difficult to address it. There's some fear about it. There's some caution. But look, if you remember, there's a story in the book of Judges, and if it's, I think, Judges 19, it's a terrible story. Now, I love the Bible for something. The Bible shows us how we are. God doesn't hide it. When there's a rip, there's a whatever, he doesn't hide it. He says his actions so that we will know how badly we're falling and how much we need a savior. Okay, so in Judges 19, you'd find somebody did something very terrible. They are troubled. In Judges, terrible things were happening in Israel at the time. Yes. This person who is supposed to be of the Levite tribe had traveled somewhere. Some people were chasing him, so they'll do bad things, with him. He takes a woman, gives the woman to the people. Yeah, it's a very bad story of abuse.
Yes.
Everything that happened in that story is so bad that when he cuts, after the woman had died, and he cuts her into pieces and sent it across the 12 tribes of Israel, people came out and said, look, ever since our fathers came out of Egypt, we have never seen anything like this. We have to speak up about it. That was in Judges 19:30. It says that we have to take counsel, plan, and speak up about this thing. And that is the way we should approach abuse in the church. As Christians, we can't hide it. People are suffering
in silence.
In silence. And they don't know who to turn to, because they think they will be blamed, or they think they won't be believed, or they think that it is their cross to bear, or they think that it's so shameful they can't talk about it. But I mean, well, ask me some more questions, otherwise I'll run ahead of
myself. I think this is good. I think this is good. And Dr. Angela, I'm already overwhelmed with the conversation. Just even the analogy you just gave us from the Bible, and this incident that happened, which was a wake up to the whole of Israel. That is like, we have to look at this. We have to look at it. And there's just so much happening. Even with this COVID that we've stayed home, it's unimaginable. Like having people stay home with their abusers. It's like, either like some of the stories, I can't even wrap my mind around it. Like, how do we, where do we start to seals us off. And these are Christian homes. When we come out, we show this whatever that facade that everything is fine. We wear the same shirts and the same colors, and we take the pictures and we put them on Facebook out there, and we present a front, but behind the scenes, no, you cannot talk to anyone. No, you can't call this person. Control everything. And when even someone tries to reach out for help, the thing is like, no, I mean, it looks bad. It's where do we start? Where do we start?
Starting is having conversations such as we're having. A part of the work that I've done over the years came from the realization that I needed to combine things. I started with talking. I'm a talker. And thankfully, God helped me to learn some of these things. And so I could speak about them. But then you speak at a place or you speak on a radio station, you come out and there's a woman meeting you saying, I heard you on air. And you're saying that nobody has to sit down and be abused without saying anything. I am being abused. What should I do? Where can I go?
Wow.
So immediately, and this was very early on in this work, and I said, no, I can't just keep talking about this. I need to set up something that will help people who are being abused to be able to have counseling, a crisis intervention. Of course, all of it didn't come at once, but this is what we've been doing, and to be able to get shelter if they have to run, because sometimes you need to run. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but let me just say that
it's okay.
I was reflecting on this. This is something that you keep reflecting on over and over, because every case that I work with, even though I've seen trends of it over and over, it's still like fresh. It's still like shocking. It's still like, what? Why would anybody do this? And I've been doing this for a long time. But I'm saying so because these are human beings. They are not just statistics, okay? And people actually end up dead. In Ghana, in the past, let's say 15 months, maybe less, over 23 women, in fact, at a point, I think I stopped counting, have died at the hands of their partners. It's either husband or somebody, a living partner. 23 women in rapid succession. In between there, we heard of the pastor who shot his wife in the US. Yes. So, and that's also, okay. So you're talking about some of them coming from Christian homes or supposedly Christian homes and so on. Okay. And I was reflecting on it and I said, Lord, I know that this is a very sensitive subject. It's difficult, especially for those who are in it, to come out and talk about it because they are caught up in this cultural bubble. The baggage that we come to our understanding of marriage, we bring into it. So I'm beginning to believe that when people are in trouble and they are praying, especially when they are being abused, they already have a set mind about how you should respond. They're looking for change in the other person's behavior. Meanwhile, the person is not changing because even God won't force anybody to change.
No.
The person needs to know that, look, I am doing bad things. I want to change. I am in trouble. Somebody help me to change. Then they can go through the process that will bring the needed change. But you can't change them. Even God won't force them to change. So often when people are in trouble and they are praying about these things because they are being abused, they are being, insulted, they are being beaten up and so on and so forth, they're already thinking, God, change this person for me. But they are not thinking that maybe God is saying, look this way and see whether you can find an answer here. I'm providing you an answer here. I'm providing you a resource here. Look at it. But we are not looking because in our minds, the answer must come in a certain way.
Yes.
So I was further reflecting. I said, look, let's go back to the book of Judges. I speak about Judges today because Judges was a really terrible time in the life of Israel. And Yeah. And we should also remember that Israel's story is our story. So, we can always relate to it, the story of our redemption from all that. So, see, judges, the people of God consistently do very bad things: idolatry, sacrificing their children, worshiping other gods. I mean, it's terrible. Social decay and everything. They just leave the worship of God. They forget about God and everything. And then God says, I speak and you don't want to mind me. Okay, I'm backing off. I'm just looking my way. Go do your stuff. Then oppressors come oppressing them. Really oppressing them, fighting them, defeating them, running over their farms and everything. Then they remember they have a God and they cry out to God. And God who says, I have forsaken you, always shows us he doesn't forsake. Look, his eyes are still on his children.
Yes.
When he hears their cry, the Bible makes us understand that in our language, you say, unto me. The compassion and the churning in his stomach. He cannot stand the oppression of his children. So he sends them a savior. Time and again. Time and again. He sends them somebody to rescue them from the hand of the oppressor, even though they took themselves there. Yes. Look, in many of these situations, people don't marry to go and take themselves into abuse. So if God will hear the cries of people who have done so much wrong and are being oppressed by their enemies justifiably and send them deliverance, help, why would God not listen to the cries of a victim who is being terribly abused by another person? Okay? And that is why I tend to think that we need to look at this very well in terms of scripture, in the light of scripture, because people start from there to dissuade people from seeking help. But I'm trying to make people understand that they should look at scripture properly. When King Herod went after baby Jesus, I believe that baby Jesus, even as a baby, could have killed King Herod. Yes, he was still God, even as a baby in the manger. He is still God. He had only come to become a man to save us. He could have killed King Herod. Yet an angel appeared to Joseph in the dream and said, look, take the mother and child and flee. And flee to Egypt and don't come back until me, God, have sorted the thing out. So there are times when God could have sorted King Herod out immediately. Yeah. But God, in his wisdom, told the mother and child, and look at the distance between Israel and Egypt. Yeah. Baby Jesus had to flee. It wasn't an easy journey. Nobody who is fleeing from abuse that can lead to something that you don't want to see will have an easy journey. But of necessity, you need to take certain steps. Right. Joseph and Mary took the baby and left. Jesus told his people, when the persecution starts, don't remain in the same towns. Flee to other places. God doesn't expect that we will do nothing. Wow. But one thing I also realize is that because it's about somebody you love most of the time. Codependency. Exactly. The codependency, the confusion, the ambivalence. Not sure, I love this person, but this person is the one who is beating me. They beat me up and then they come back and say, oh, I don't know what came over me. The devil made me do it. If you had cooked my food this way, I wouldn't have beaten you up, and all of that. And then they start apologizing, getting people to come and beg, and you are caught up in that cycle of violence again. Yeah. So it is often very difficult for people who are in it to actually be able to compartmentalize the things that are happening so they take the appropriate steps. And that is why the rest of us must do everything we can to support them, help them, give them options, because at that time the confusion is great. This is not a stranger oppressor. This is somebody you live with, you probably have children with, and all of that. You sleep in the same bed, they hold you, they kiss you, and next time they are beating you, they are raping you. The confusion can be big. And that is why we as a society and as a church cannot stand afar off and say we don't say anything about it. We need to say it. We need to preach about it. We need to tackle it. And we need to let people know that there is support. And we need to train to be able to give people support.
We need to train. And before we even go there on the training, you said a lot of things. And I'm just going to piggyback on some of the things you said as you were talking. When we are, as Christians, you're getting married, we typically don't go live with a person, get to know the person. So even no matter how long you court or date, you may never get to know the person till you marry the person, right? So sometimes a challenge that we see with people is, just don't change. It's all like, don't change, right? Don't change. Even though now you know what you know, you are stuck. You have to be here forever and ever, even if it means dying in where you are. But there should be that ability that as you get to know things, and as you get to understand someone and how they act and their anger issues or whatever it is that they have, you should make up your mind at that point that, no, I think this is not what I bargained for. And I can ask for help, or I can raise my hand and say, no, I need to talk to someone. So how do we identify the signs? So we're going to talk from the pre-marriage and in the marriage. Pre-marriage, because a lot of us who are watching may have relationships. Sometimes it's even, you're not even a spouse type of relationship. It's a brother, sister, it's a uncle, son, whatever relationship. What are some of the signs that we should be also looking out for? It's part of the training, but I'll ask the training question also later. But before you even get entangled with someone, what are some of the telltale signs? Because some of them are visible. It's just that because we haven't spelled it out, people don't know to look for it. Right. And then if you are in, you may not be able to see it, but what are some of the things that could also tell us, even as friends or as neighbors or church members, when we see that someone is in this situation, they may not be able to pick it up, that we can also intervene? Because that's one thing I was telling last week when we talked. I was talking about how my daughter went to school, and then one of the kids said, how do I commit? Like, what are some of the tools I can use to commit suicide? And so she comes home and starts researching suicide help, and she doesn't even tell me. But thankfully, as soon as she searches for it, the nurse picks up and calls me and said, why is your daughter searching for suicide? What is she looking for? Is she in danger, or is she helping someone? Then we had the conversation, and she was able to bring it up. They looked for the guy all the 9 years. Some places will be easier to pick up, others may not. How do we?
Thank God for that. Thank God for that. Thank God for that, for what happened. And that's also the reason why, as Christians, we must be interested in the systems and the structures that are available, and speak to them, and advocate about them and push them and all of that. It's very important. So thank God for that. So I tend to, yes, as Christians, we are not supposed to go live with each other before marriage, do things that married people do. God knows why he says so. Yes. And it's good for us. There's good reason for that. And I pray that no matter whatever society has become now, if you're a Christian, that we stay focused on this. If you have done something that is wrong, there's forgiveness for us, please. God forgives. So don't feel guilty until you don't know what to do. God forgives. Okay. There's good reason for that. But that doesn't mean that we don't have an opportunity to examine the people that we are dating, courting, especially with marriage in view. I keep telling young people, especially, shine your eye. In fact, I have a pastor friend who says, I tell you, don't fall in love, walk in love. If you fall in love, you'll be blind. He jokes about it, but
it's true.
Open your eyes. Somebody likes you, you like that person. That's not the time when your eyes are so closed, you don't see left from right, center from whatever. No. You want, the person is already speaking about marriage, you're also thinking about it, but you need to put your thinking cap on. Love, yes, but think. Because you see, many things are seen when you are in relationship with someone. You don't have to be sleeping with them before you know.
Right.
It's the way they speak. The way, yes, they are pretenders, I know. But if you are shining your eye, it is likely you would see certain things. You know, the way they speak to other people. How do they relate to their sisters? How do they speak to them? How do they speak to other women? How do they refer to, their friends? You know, what's their kind of relationship with you? Let me give you an example. There was a young lady in my church who was enamored with this young man who was already talking about marriage and all of that. Good looking guy, you know, but I told her, shine your eye. Yes. Soon we started picking up bad stuff. For example, anytime they're together, you know, he wants to take her phone, go through every message. And if he sees a picture with a friend, who is this? Where have you been? Who did you dance with? Why did you go with that friend? You know, so he keeps asking, yes, that's a red flag. I call it a big red flag. Don't think this guy loves you so much. You know, you're the only mosquito in his netting. So, you know, yes, but that's the way people think, oh, he loves me so much. He's paying so much attention to me. Watch it. Curiosity, there's normal curiosity. Yeah. But this person actually flips your phone, you know, wanting to know everywhere you be, who you've spoken with, which, whatever you went to, which friend. That's something. Yeah. This person you are with, you're sharing your dreams with them. You know, I really think I want to become the best engineer in Ghana or set up the biggest business. And the person said, you, who do you think you are? Please, 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 please. I mean, who feels saying? The way the person will rub something like that in your face, rubbish in your drink, yes. It means at the back of their mind, they don't think you're good enough. Okay, this person starts asking you, can you come to my house and cook food for me? Can you start washing my things for me? Can you come and do my laundry? You know, things like that. You take it for love. Yeah. As they make these requests, this is different from, okay, so the person comes visiting or you're there, they're making some food and you help them. That's different. Yes. This person is actually demanding, come and make my laundry, come and do my laundry, come and do my food. Come and, you know, this gentleman I talked about one day asked this lady, are you sure you can do the dirty work of a wife? So thankfully she was in, you know, consultation with me because she wanted to check with me. The moment I heard that, I said, cut loose. Cut loose. And he had already started asking her, come and do my laundry and things like that. He sees you as more or less a domestic servant in a sense. And so at the back of people who think at the back of their minds, you are more of an object. You are more of somebody for their service, for their use. And when you see those signs, abuse is not far away. And what broke the camel's back, and I'm using these practical situations because you can talk about this theoretically, but when you put it in, you know, picture form, what broke the camel's back was when she went to work and a colleague, gentleman gave her and offered her a lift home because he lived in that direction. So apparently, as they were coming, her boyfriend, her whatever that they were cutting, was followed them all the way home. And if you know Accra and traffic and where we live, you know, it's funny. And then the moment she got out of her car, the car to go home, no, before she got out, this gentleman was behind her. He got out of his car, marched to the car, opened the door. Come on, get out. Went to the gentleman. How dare you bring my girlfriend home? Who do you think you are? You know, that kind of thing. And then the lady is so shocked. She walks into her home. Her parents, mother and father, are sitting in the hall, in the sitting room. She walks in. The gentleman follows her. She goes into her bedroom. The gentleman goes past her parents. Walks into the bedroom and gives her an earful of words. Okay. Oh, after that, I said, okay, bye-bye. This lady was very hurt. She was so emotionally entangled with him, but now she began to understand why I said, shine your eye.
Yeah.
If you see this gentleman, you wouldn't think butter would melt in his mouth. Her parents were in the sitting room, in the hall. He marched past them. And I said, hey, you are not in the home. What will happen when you get in there? Yeah. Okay, so, and I've heard of several of these stories, you know, from different people, pre-marriage, some of the things that you should be looking for. It can be from the side of a lady too, somebody who wants you not to have any friends. Yeah. You know, some person going through your stuff, going through your pictures, and yes, you know, doesn't want you to be in a good relationship with your mom, your sisters, that person is going to grab you and control you in such a way that abuse is not far away. Abuse is not far away, and treat you like their handbag. Abuse is not far. Okay, yes. So even though more women are victimized by abuse worldwide, I mean, the statistics prove it, there are also men who are victimized by these kinds of abuses. And we must take all of that. Abuse is abuse, whether it happens to the men or to the women. And I think it's important to talk about it. It just happens that because of the cultural dynamics and so on, more women than men are abused. More women have less options than men when there's abuse. Society support for women being abused and normalizing it is bigger than if a woman is abusing a man. Okay, people won't stand for it. But if a man is abusing his wife or something, it's like, well, I mean, this is what we grew up with. It's normal. You know, things like that. Yeah, and so intervention is usually slower and sometimes or no intervention at all. But if a man is being beaten, even if there isn't immediate intervention, the family won't have it. Yeah, they have more options than when a woman is being abused.
Amazing. So for those of us who are in church or who are Christians, who also see, because sometimes we see but we don't say anything. Yeah, you know, we see someone is really pretending and they're really hurting, and they may even confide in us, right, as friends or as pastors or whatever. And sometimes it's very pathetic, our answers and our response. You know, it's like, oh, just submit, just be there, you know, everything will be well. Is that the best we can do? And how do we train, you know, like as a church? I think we have to start seeing the need for people like you who have the background, have the knowledge, the mental health experts who are able to, you know, be in the church, be Christians, and still be able to help us with some of these emotional things that are happening in our, you know, in our communities. So how do we respond? Is that all we can do? Like, oh, you know, it will be okay. It will be okay. And it's not okay. And one more thing, you know, sometimes it's so difficult for us to take an action, even for those of us who are even in America and every place, UK and all that. It's like, how do I call the 911 on my husband? It's I'm giving up, like I'm giving my own up. Exactly. And because of that, I'll rather suffer. Yeah. But is it just about you, or is it about, you know, changing what is happening? Anyway, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there are many questions in this, you know, question, and you don't even know where to start from. But I mean, call 911 on your husband and so on. If you remember the story of the lady who was shot by her husband, I think, I don't know whether it has been tried or not in the US. This is a Ghanaian, in Florida. Ghanaian couple. Yes, I mean, we know the pattern, at least because of social media and so on. And then finally, in the final analysis, we saw a brother, a family member intervene and trying to convince her to actually report the matter to the police and so on. It's like, what we read was that, you know, she's afraid the gentleman will be thrown out of America and so on. You lose his status and all of that. Next day, he takes a gun, shoots her at the workplace. And he had been, so there was a cycle of violence already happening. Yes. And the cycle of violence is something that when I teach or train, you know, I really get into it, because it helps people understand that violence, especially at home, is cyclical. It doesn't stop until there's a strong intervention. It won't stop until there's a strong intervention. Okay, and that intervention is either by, the person involved, or by family, or by the state, something that really shifts the power balance in that relationship for the abuser to be confronted with the abuse, and for the one who is being victimized to be kept safe, to be believed and supported. Okay. Yes. And as Christians, we don't want to get into marriage and divorce. And so when it's coming to that place, it's very difficult to talk about it, but we still have to talk about it. What do we do where there is danger? Okay. Now, can we separate for a while? Like I said, do we flee and then make sure things are happening so that there's a possibility of coming back if things will change? These are things that we need to engage in, think about, and even train to support those who are in trouble, and sometimes even train to support those who are willing to change.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me come back to one of the things that you talked about. How do we help? How do we support? When we say it's okay to change and, pray some more and all of that. I want to address this issue, and I think that in itself is a whole talk by itself, but let me just say it a little bit. As Christians, we really need to read that Ephesians 5 passage very well. Paul addressed it in Colossians and addressed it in Ephesians, and he talked about what we now call the household codes, where, and often people read from Ephesians 5:22 instead of 21. I know a lot of people know this, but let me put it down for emphasis, because Ephesians 5:21 frames that conversation. Remember the person we are following. His name is Jesus Christ. If there's any picture of submission we have to look at, it's Jesus. In the way he submitted to his Father and in obedience, even all the way dying for us, that was voluntarily.
Voluntarily.
Okay? Yes. Voluntarily, he gave him, yes. So let's look at that. When Paul says submit to one another out of reverence for Christ, one to the other, it means all of us as Christians must learn to submit to one another. As long as you have a Christian brother or sister, they are young, they are older, whatever, submission is an attitude of the heart.
It's true.
That results in a certain action, the way we act and so on. It's an attitude. The more you know Christ, the more you must be submissive. Okay. People often think, okay, look at the way I speak. Oh, so when they see my husband, they say, hey, how can you be married to this woman? The way she speaks and everything.
I've heard that one.
No. when they say that, he laughs, okay? he laughs. Because submission is actually an attitude of the heart. It is Christ-like. Husbands must submit to their wives as Christians. Wives must submit to their husbands. Brothers and sisters, pastors to their congregation to pastors. It's an attitude of the heart. That is that we are becoming more Christ-like. Now, then Paul comes to the home, and he's speaking within a context of very rigid, the Roman context, the Greco-Roman context, okay? Greek-Roman context within which he wrote. Men were the bosses of their homes.
Yes.
Unless you're a rich woman, you almost have no voice in society. Men had the power to divorce. Men had the power to, as for children, they don't even come. They love it when they are born, but, that's about it. Look at the way the disciples treated the children when they were coming to Jesus, shooing the women away. And it was Jesus who showed the disciples that he can take a child and place them in their midst and say, look at this child. If you want to enter heaven, be like this one. Submission is an attitude of the heart, and it has no gender color.
Wow.
Whether you are a man or woman, if you want to be more Christ-like, submission is something you do, you learn. You must go down, tell the Holy Spirit, help me to be submitted unto Christ and not to other people.
Wow.
The Lord of Lords was never bossy. The only people you hear him, addressing were those loudmouth Pharisees who thought they knew more than anybody else. Jesus was very firm with them. Look at how he treated the women, how he treated the fishermen, how he treated children, how he treated, and you don't want to be like him. So when you are talking about submission within the context of marriage, and you don't understand this, you would think that it is one person who is supposed to go under somebody and be obedient unto everything that the person is doing, whether the person is telling them to be a criminal, whether they're abusing them, whether whatever, submit. Of course, that's wrong. The woman's submission is like the way Christ submitted to his Father. Then there is the issue of the head, who is the leader of the family. In the Christian family is the man. The head is supposed to be like the leader that Jesus talked about. He who seeks to lead must first be the servant of them all. Wow. And then goes on to talk about love. Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself. Christ went under to lift his church up. Now, if you're a husband and you think that headship means you are the boss and the authority of all, and you can do what you like, that's problematic. Because then you would also find that a husband who behaves like that begins to get a wife who begins to find ways to manipulate, find their way out, also dominate. That's why there's so much trouble in our Christian families.
You nailed it.
Action and reaction, yes. How are we being like Christ in submission as wife unto your husband, and as husband in loving your wife as Christ? If we were doing this, will we see any abuse?
No.
We see, yes, we may have disagreements from time because we are human, but how would we even disagree? What kind of tone of voice would we use? What kind of language will we apply? When we remember that Christ died for us and he did all this for us, will we remember to speak in a certain way that is respectful? Can we fight fair? Can we fight without insulting each other? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, if we mean to be like Christ. So if we read Ephesians 5:21 to 33, and we don't bring this understanding to it, and you go and see somebody, you are suffering, and they say submit. Oh, it's because you are very loud. That is why they give you slaps. Things like, if you did this, then this won't happen, and things like that.
And this can be said for my pastor.
Yes, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we are missing the boat completely. And as for me, one day I'll stand before God in tea. We need to understand the master we are serving. What is he like? The master who would bend and wash our feet, dirty feet.
Our dirty feet.
Dirty feet. Take off his royal robe and wash our dirty. How is he like? For us to think that if we are in any position of leadership, power, and so on, we can behave as we like. No. Talk as we like. No, we can't. And we need to get this frame. And I'm addressing this because I'm talking to supposedly a predominantly Christian, group and all of that. And these are issues that we really need to think about seriously. Yes. Submission is an attitude of the heart, and it doesn't know male or female.
Wow.
It doesn't know, just like love. When God talked about love, and Paul emphasizes it in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient. Put your name there, male or female. Paul is patient. Angela is kind. Paul does not envy. There are people who envy their spouses when they are going up. Yes, and it becomes a cause of, trouble.
Competition.
Exactly, competition. I'm going to school to do this, and the person is annoyed because they think that, you're getting ahead of them, and it becomes a source of trouble. Angela does not boast, does not envy. Paul is patient. Paul rejoices in, yes, that's what you do.
Wow.
So these are things that we need to understand and integrate it into our pastoral care, our preaching, our family seminars and so on. So especially for premarital counselors and so on. Because if you go into this attitude with this, I'm the boss, I'm the head, and you are the this, and the person who says, you think you're coming to boss me too, I'll find my own ways and means. That becomes the trouble we are seeing in many of our Christian families. And it's a shame to think that so many of our families who marry nicely in church are getting down into all manner of things. Divorces are all around and all of that. It's very, very sad to think about it. So for us who want to help, I think we need to gain some knowledge about what domestic abuse is. And of course, I haven't even addressed the different types, physical, verbal, sexual, economic abuse, social abuse, even spiritual abuse. I haven't even begun to go there, and our time is
up. We want to ask for a few more minutes for me. I think we need a little bit more, because we need to get into this a little bit more so we can have a little more understanding, because the things you are saying are very deep, and I am so blessed that you've done this enough, and God has equipped you to speak on this issue. I think that is really helpful. Submission is a thing of the heart, and that is something that you have no idea what you've just done, but I think it's powerful to understand the framework that we as Christians should be working from. A hard thing, and not that, the person talks too much, so that's what doesn't make us submissive, or what. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing, yeah.
So Tina, I would again emphasize that I think that for people who really want to help, in case you are in church, you want to either help people in trouble or be part of the counseling department, and one of the things you need to do is to get a lot more knowledge, because if you don't, a little knowledge can be dangerous. Too much knowledge puffs up, and a little knowledge can also be dangerous. You need to you need to get more knowledge. Thankfully, there's a lot on the internet, but then of course be careful where you're going to also. So, and also training for pastors, for counselors in churches, for leaders, for departmental leaders. These things for marriage counselors and the setup. I think it's very important. In fact, yes. I'm going to do training when I get back home, because some people are asking me, how do I help? And you need to know how not to be judgmental. You need to know how to have a referral of resources that you can refer the person. You need to know how to even speak to this person who is telling you about their trouble and so on. You need to get training to be able to do that. I mean, I'm not saying training is the be all end all. Even just the fact that you have the heart to want to help, you can have some very basic things by just being warm and listening and offering them some support. For example, do you want to see this other person? They may be more helpful. Do you want to call the police if it's that bad? Do you want to go to a family member? You explore with the person, because at that time they are in a place where without insight, yes. And that's why without insight, when people have gone through this for a period of time, sometimes, let me just put it within a framework of a man battering a woman, for example, a husband to a wife or something. The person then knows that they're going to be beaten, for example. Then they start chasing you, boom, because they know they'll be beaten. So beat me, preko. But the insight is so low now, they don't realize that one push can be the end of their lives. And it has happened. Yes, one push against the wall, their head will hit them. That's it. Or they get so injured, or they run into a kitchen where there are many weapons, because yes, these are all insights that you need to help to bring to the person to explore their options and see how they can keep safe. Maybe their children involved, how to keep them safe in the US, in the UK, and so on. There are many, many systems that help. And it can be explored and used and so on. And then you can have some peace of mind to think about what next. If I want my marriage bad and I have to live in this situation, how can I keep myself safe It's tricky, but people learn for that. If I need to step out for a while and I'm getting separated, what are the implications? How can we confront it so that this person who is doing it would actually want help if they really want to change? There are possibilities.
Right.
Okay. Yes. So these are all things that, and it's too much to talk about
in one session. Absolutely.
Yes,
That's why we said we need to have you again next year, God willing, to have a few more weeks with you where you can explain some of these things. Because one of the things that I wanted to even bring up was even how do we protect the children? Because we've had abuse situation when it is the father abusing the child and the mother is not able to speak out. Right?
Oh, yes.
Because again, I don't want to give my spouse up, but then that it's not helping the child. And but one thing that I want us to just clarify, which maybe we'll be ending soon. So I know people are not coming on, but it's okay. You can go back and watch the replay. And God willing, we'll have Dr. Angela again next year. But one thing I wanted to also have us, focus on is sometimes you speaking up is the salvation of just you alone, but also for other people. Yes. So for instance, you think about, even if it's a superior person, maybe even in the church, and someone is abusing you and you just feel ashamed to say it. It's not just about you, because maybe if you say it, that's where the bus ends, right?
Absolutely.
If you don't say it, then the perpetrator keeps perpetrating this.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. And especially for us as Christians, look, our faith is a speaking faith. Okay, we speak to mountains, we speak to things, we speak to God. So why are you silent when it comes to this? Okay, why are you silent when it comes to? And we are people in community. So why are you silent? There are people. You are not alone. Oh, you are not alone. No, you will be surprised that when you reach out for help, you may get the help you need. Yes, it's not everybody who will give you the help, but you shouldn't stop there. Even if you don't get help from this, there might be another person. Don't suffer in silence. These days, thankfully, there's also internet. You can go on certain Christian sites and so on, look for what do I do when there's abuse. Okay, you have your phone, smartphones, and so on. Is there help I can find somewhere? Is there a Christian counselor who works on domestic abuse I can find, speak with, and so on? Don't be silent, because if you go to heaven before your time, God will say, what are you doing? I needed you to do this and that and that and that. What about, okay, but you were going to get the crown of something, but you get this one for the meantime because. And often God is sending you help, but you are not looking. You are looking at it from a certain frame. So you are not looking like this guy who was drowning. That story, many people know this. There was a storm and there's lots of rain and so on, and he's drowning and he's praying, please rescue me, God, please rescue me. A boat comes by. Please, let's take you in. He says, no, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. A helicopter comes by. Oh, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. A submarine or something comes by. I can't remember which one it was, says that, no, I expect God to rescue me from. He drowns and he goes to heaven and God says, why didn't you rescue me when I was praying? Then I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. I sent you a whatever. And you still said that you are waiting for me to answer. What did you expect me to do? So yes, I'm telling you, sometimes the help is next door. The help is sitting right by you, and we are not looking because we are saying, God, answer my prayer this way. Yes, God can. Yes, I'm not saying it's impossible with God. God can, but let's remember, when it comes to another person's behavior, it is incumbent on that person who is behaving that way to want to change. That was the difference between David and Saul. Yes, you can change you. You can change the other person's behavior if they want to do what they are doing. And I'm telling you, even God doesn't force anybody against their will. We need to understand that. David did something bad. The moment he was confronted, he said, Lord, I give up, I give in, I surrender. So, sorry, cry, he didn't mean it. You go back to do the same thing over. That's the difference. The sorry was not genuine. because he goes back to do what it is that he wasn't supposed to be doing. Okay, and so even God doesn't force people to change. And so what you need to do is, how can I change for me? How can I protect myself, my children in this situation? If I'm going to stay here, what can I do? If I'm not staying, what can I do? Okay, to make sure that I am getting what it is that I think will be best for me and the children. And yeah, that is also not to say, remember, you're still a Christian. God says even your enemies you pray for, you bless. So whoever is oppressing you, yes, God still loves them. As difficult as this is, and this is another matter for another discussion, because all the issues about healing, forgiveness, and so on, that's also part of some of the things that confuse people. If I'm taking action, does it mean I haven't forgiven that person? No, there is a difference between letting people face responsibility for the action and forgiveness. We need to understand that. Yes. Okay, so all of those things are things that we need to.
Oh, this is so good. I know it's a short time and our time is up, but if you have any questions for Dr. Angela, it's a good time to pose it, and then we'll see if we can answer it quickly. If not, then we'll answer it. We'll come back and answer it on the group as well. But Risi, I see you. Welcome. And Rosemond, I see Helen. I see all of you watching from different places. Oh, Bello, you're on there. I see all of you. Some of you I don't see, but I see that Dede, you are on. Maggie is on. George is on. God bless you all for joining. Let's continue to have this conversation. This one is a really, really deep one. And I think Dr. Angela has done a great job, even just giving us a little insight into all about domestic abuse. And we didn't touch on so many aspects of it. We are trusting God that next year we can come back and do a more deeper dive into it. What is it looking like for child abuse and for other type of abuses that we may not be speaking about? But we want to start the conversation. I want you to also have, that mind of starting the conversation. So I have a question for you, Dr. Angela. It says that, what happens, advice will you give to someone not willing to speak up but being abused on a daily basis? We talked about that a bit, but yeah, I think that one is still a mindset that we need.
Yeah, we still have to. We still have to tell them to speak up. In fact, if that person is with you in church or friend, office, and so on, encourage them. Keep encouraging them. Sometimes you can see they look depressed, they look haphazard, their hair is out of shape, they are wearing clothes and their buttons are, some are down, some are up, and so on. Something is going on. And if you're supposed to be each other's keeper, sometimes you can only say a few words, okay? Like, look, I'm here. If you really want to speak, I'm here. Whatever it is, I believe that there's a solution out there. Don't be afraid to speak to someone. Encourage them. Sometimes people carry pamphlets. They'll leave a pamphlet somewhere, near your computer without you seeing. And the person can pick it up, read it, and get some information that they need, and so on. Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, we have to be bold enough to speak about these things. They are real, they happen. And especially in a lot of, different contexts where even sometimes we didn't even go there. Like if you had we talked about the residential, situation where you have a compound house, you're told, oh, go give this to this supposed uncle, and they touch you in a certain way. And it's not right.
Yeah.
And
sexual abuse is a big thing. Yeah. Big.
A lot of us had near-death experiences, right? Growing up, that we didn't know how to manage. But it's a good time to now talk about it and make sure that someone else, remember, it's not about just you. It's not just about you who is going through this. You are maybe saving someone else from going through by just speaking up. So speak up, even if your voice shakes and even if you're afraid. Speak up and get the help, because remember, you're a masterpiece. That's why we are here. It says you are created for good works. And when we started, we talked, Dr. Angela talked about the image of God. That is who you are. You are not to be demeaned. You are not to be trampled upon. You're not to be, just beating and made to look useless. Okay, so you are special, you are precious to God, and maybe you need to hear that today. God is really caring about you, has brought someone your way to even speak about this. Some of us is going to be a good, somebody's asking another question. I'm trying to wrap up. A good, wake up call for you to look at your situation, look at what is happening, look around you, even your friends and family, and see, is this abuse or is it just okay? Dr. Angela, before your last words, and I'm going to let you go, but I want you to answer this one. We didn't touch on this at all, and I think it's a difficult place to go, but Dr. Angela can handle everything. So, is there sexual abuse in marriage?
Oh, there is. I know of too many cases. I mean, you just don't have time to check. There is sexual abuse in marriage. Oftentimes, the different kinds of abuse, physical, sexual, economic, verbal, psychological abuse, and the other ones. Oftentimes, there are a number of them going on at the same time. Oftentimes in the cycle of violence, for some, you'd find that, there's a period where the tension is building, then there's the explosion part where, the violent incident happens. Sometimes that violent incident is not just physical. The person will beat you up well and then drag you into the room and rape you.
Wow.
It's part of the whole thing. I'm going to show you, what it is. Yes, so there's sexual, and that's not the only instance. I mean, that's not the only thing about sexual abuse in marriage. There isn't enough time to talk about. I could give you a number of cases, a number of instances that I've had to personally engage with and so on, and it will. Yes, there is.
Wow.
There is. Yes.
So stay tuned. Pray that God willing we'll have Dr. Angela come back next year and talk to us. But I'm going to share the organization that she leads with us, and I want us to go support what she's doing. She's doing a great job. Pray for her. Let's keep her in our prayers, and let's encourage her, because it's not an easy topic to handle. It is a very sensitive topic, and we thank God that He's giving her grace to do what she's doing. So thank you so much. I want to hear your last words, a few words, not last words, but a few words that you share with us as we go off today that will help us to, keep this in context as we go along.
So thank you, Tina, for having me. Thank you for sharing the information of the Art Foundation with your group of people, and also my recently published book. Part of my PhD, I looked at women's mental health in the church. Some of you may be interested. It's on Amazon if you want to order. And yes, I'll be happy for us to pick up a few sessions next year, God willing. We pray for grace and strength. I would just keep encouraging people that God loves us, truly. You've said it all. We are precious to Him. And especially in marriages, we should remember that we are in a triangular relationship. In Malachi, God says, I'm the witness of this. It means that I presided over it. I am the one at the tip of the triangle, and the two of you are here. So it's like this, okay? It's a triangle. I'm here, and you people are here, and we are relating to each other. If you mistreat this other person, guess who you're touching? Guess who you're touching? Yes. When you lift your hand to slap that partner of yours, guess who you're touching? There are three of us in this relationship. So even though I'm, sort of contextualizing it within marriage, which, because it's a covenant relationship in which God is the head of the union, I want us to take that home with us and keep thinking through it so that we can all improve the way in which we relate to our spouses and also to the other people around us. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. And